Hi Bernhard, another network video, right?
Yes, so we are doing the compute network or the network that is for the virtual machines. And you were mentioning something in the previous video that you did some secret stuff. It is not
Secret
so.
stuff.
Yes, after the management networking. Well, basically, it's when the management network is there, you have line of sight to the domain controller. Then you did the domain join and install some updates. I think that's what you did.
Exactly. So I,
If
the wording was wrong. We don't do anything here secretly. We show
uh,
everything, or we sent you to the videos where we show the stuff. So
right,
this time watch 6 and 7 from our series, right?
mhm,
And now we
yes.
continue with our
So
compute or VM network.
it's the generic installation series go for
Yeah,
video 6 and 7, and that's what Carsten did behind the curtains. Um,
exactly.
and what we do now here is we are setting up the virtual machine or the compute network, and the purpose is to have our virtual machines um, be able to talk to the outside world. Right, that's it. So if we look at our nodes, that would be this network. So we have the same network accessible on all of the nodes. And so we are laying the basics there. And obviously, the virtual machines that you will create later might be in different IP address ranges, right? Or different VLANs. It's depending on what your applications or your virtual machines should be stitched together, right?
Mhm.
So from a hardware perspective, looking at our nodes, this is this adapter here, so the 25G Mellanox adapter, 2 ports. We are stitching these 2 ports together in a compute switch, and on top of the compute switch, or a set switch, which we call compute or VM
Switch.
switch.
No compute switch. That's right.
Okay. And on top of this, the virtual machines, artificial network adapters will be connected or created. All right. So that's, I think, it. Did you
So I
want to mention? Ah, yes, you wanted to mention, I think, something about the network, right?
Yeah, but you said it basically. So
Mm,
in our network
mm,
is stretched over both sides.
yeah.
So the VM network, our VMs can have the same addresses, IP addresses, same
Right.
VLANs on both sides. So if you have a very fast stretched cluster, so imagine the metro cluster we mentioned in our first video where we had Paris and London, it's possible that you have different IP ranges in London, different gateways to the outside world, and the same in Paris. So your VMs would have to have different IP
Mm,
addresses if they run in Paris or in London. That's not
yeah.
the case here, and
Yeah.
I haven't seen any cluster yet where this is the case. So all the stretched clusters I did in the past 8 years or so,
Mm,
and of course, this was not all Azure Stack HCI stretch clusters. There is something before that. They use the same IP addresses for the VMs in both sides. Yeah,
mhm,
and we can do that here also.
yep.
So let's switch to
Yep.
my screen.
Mhm,
So you see now I'm connected via RDP because we have configured our management adapter. Now I can remotely connect, but still it is the core console. So we don't have now graphical tools here.
mhm,
So, but it's much nicer with copy and paste and so on. So I prepared a little script called create stretched VM switch.
mhm,
Here we see the name of our switch, and Bernhard said it's called VM switch. I changed that, so it's now like in our slides. It's now called compute switch, and that's a better name. So I will just set this variable here for the script. Then we have a part, again, you know that already from our management video. I want this 25 gigabit Mellanox NICs. It's a two-port
mhm,
adapter, as Bernhard mentioned, but it has 2 ports, and we want to create a set switch on those 2 ports. So I grab them over the interface description because there is something unique there that I can
mhm,
choose these 2 adapters. I
mhm,
grab them And here I do something special. I set the VLAN ID on the adapter to 0. So if we had another design, and in our Azure Stack HCI installation series where we installed a non-stretched cluster, we directly used our Mellanox adapter for SMB3 or RDMA, not this one, but other ones. And we configured the VLAN ID there. And I had the problem when I changed it to a stretch scenario in a former setup. I couldn't work with adapters because the VLAN tag was on the hardware. And we are now creating a set switch, and we have to set then the VLAN adapters on the virtual adapters that we don't create here. So that's in another video, right? So just grabbing the two adapters. And the next part would be create our set switch, our compute switch. So we get it. We look for a switch with the name compute switch. And if it's there, we remove it. Then we sleep a bit and create the new switch. So let's do that. Copy. There's our sleep. Some commands need a little bit more time than others, but the problem is the prompt is back already. So a sleep here and there in PowerShell doesn't hurt, right, Bernhard?
Yeah, if you automate lots of chunks, especially with networking configuration,
Yeah.
sometimes sleep is a good thing.
Yeah. So last, I rename the adapters, and I know you have maybe a question about something special in the switch creation.
Yes, so I mean, you did enable IOV, which is enabling SR IOV. Why are, or is it something that you do default by default, or is it special to your environment? So what is your thinking around that?
Nowadays, there was a time where I really don't care about the SIOV, and
Mm.
we talk about it what it is. Yeah, but
Yep.
nowadays I configure it by default because we have maybe some advantages in our VMs. So first, what is SIOV? It's
Mhm.
a possibility with the PCI bus. If you have network cards that support SIOV, you can map a part of the card into a VM. So now the VM sees the Mellanox cards if we would do that. And you have, of course, to install also the Mellanox adapter. So in the VM, you have a bridge of the synthetic Hyper-V network adapter and the Mellanox adapter. And if you are running on a host that has a Mellanox adapter, it can directly communicate through the Mellanox adapter and doesn't have to go the way through the management OS. Look it
Mhm.
up if you don't know what the management OS is. So it's a bit faster than the normal Hyper-V way through the management OS. But usually I didn't care because the network is really fast in Hyper-V. Some
Yep.
people care and they want to have the last possible gigabit or bit out of the performance. There is now another feature that we can use in virtual machines. That's RDMA. So if you have RDMA enabled network cards, we will talk about that in another video. Um, you can also enable RDMA in the VM. Yeah, and for that you have to map the part of the adapter over SRIOV into your VM.
Mm.
You have to install the drivers, and then you can use RDMA. And then
Okay.
you maybe ask yourself, why should I do that? Is there a use case for that? And this is a nice segue to do a little bit of advertising for another video series we did. We did the Azure Virtual Desktop on Azure Stack HCI series. And there we used a 2-node storage basis direct cluster for our profile disks. And storage basis direct can perfectly use RDMA between the hosts to transport the data, right? And we could enable RDMA in our virtual machines and use RDMA for the transport. So that would be maybe a use case for this.
So long story short, I mean, if you have network sensitive workload running in virtual machines, SRIOV might be a good thing, like file servers, as you mentioned, or SQL servers, for example, where you have a lot of traffic and you need to have latency. And I think SIOV takes a different path when it comes to virtualization. So it's probably offloading the CPU on your host, right? But with the caveat that you need to install the drivers for the adapter in the virtual machine, and you need to keep it updated, right? In order to have it
Right.
working,
Yeah, and
have to
you
work,
need to keep
work
you have to care about another thing in the virtual
right?
machines. So
And
here's the yeah.
another small minor add to this, right? So in Azure Virtual Machines, for example, we also do SRIOV, and that's the advanced net or the networking acceleration stuff, which
Mhm.
gives better latencies.
better
Yeah,
better performance, right?
yeah.
So here is what we did. So you see now we have our interfaces. We have the two Mellanox NICs now,
Mhm.
these two, and these are used in the compute switch. And that is all we wanted to do in this lengthy video, right, Bernhard? So we see each other in another network configuration
Yep.
very soon.